All right. I am going to go ahead and get started. So, as I said, my name is Gina Waldhorn. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Sports Innovation Lab. And this is the Fan Project Live series, a new weekly series that's focused on discussing the real challenges as well as the untapped business potential of women's sports. And we're featuring guests from all of the organizations from that are supporters of the Fan Project, from athletes to leagues, to technology companies, to ask questions and learn more about women's sports and the untapped business potential behind women's sports. The Fan Project, if you are not familiar, is an ambitious initiative to prove that demand by analyzing firsthand fan data. We believe the more visible women's sports are, the greater their power is to inspire the next generation. So we are asking fans, all fans of sports, to go to thefanproject.co and donate your social media profile, your social media archive data from Facebook or Twitter. We've got instructions how to do that. It takes 5-10 minutes. We're giving away some awesome free t-shirts. So take 10 minutes, support, save, prove the demand of women's sports, get an awesome free t-shirt, and learn all about the Fan Project at thefanproject.co. All of the data that we ask for is anonymized. And again, you can learn more about this on the website. But ultimately, we're using this data to write a report that proves the demand, that proves the opportunity to broadcasters to offer more coverage, that proves the opportunity for brands to sponsor women's sports, and to prove the opportunity to network executives and investors that women's sports is, where they're going to see a positive ROI and what the fan of the future, the fluid fan, is looking for. So again, that's fanproject.co. Come, share your data, get a free t-shirt. Learn more about what we're up to. So without any further ado, I would love to introduce today's host and moderator, Megan Perry. Megan is a sports management veteran with over 10 years of industry experience working for the WNBA President's Office. You might have seen her on air as well at CBS Sports, and she now serves as the Executive Director of Women's Initiatives for the Sports Innovation Lab. Prior to joining the Sports Innovation Lab, Megan spent 8 years at the WNBA as part of the basketball operations and player relations team, managing player operations for league events like the Draft, All-Star, Inspiring Women, and more. She also worked to develop programming to assist current and former players with off-court initiatives and community engagement efforts. Beyond her time at the WNBA, she's remained engaged across the sports landscape, covering women's basketball on CBS, and she is tireless in her efforts to champion and advance women's sports across media, entertainment, and technology as the newest member of our team. So Megan's going to host our conversation today. And with us, we are so thrilled to have Carolyn Swords. She is a recently retired 10-year WNBA veteran who most recently played for the Las Vegas Aces. She initially retired after the 2019 and began working in the front office for the Aces before injuries and COVID brought her back to playing for the team during the 2020 season, culminating in a WNBA Finals appearance. Swords was selected 15th overall in the 2000 WNBA draft by the Chicago Sky and has also played 6 seasons abroad for Spain, Turkey, Italy, Australia, and Poland. A 4-year starter at Boston College, Swords still owns the Eagles' career records for rebounds, block shots, and field goal percentage, and is second in career points. So truly, we have a baller on our hands. Swords has spent also several years as a member of the Women's National Basketball Players Association. And in 2018, she helped to launch their partnership with Rock the Vote to encourage voter registration and turnout. As a member of the executive committee, she was one of 7 key players to be heavily involved in negotiating the current and groundbreaking collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, between the players and the league, which was signed in 2020. So when it comes to progressing women's sports and the investment, gender equality, and athlete rights, we couldn't have a better representative with us today than Carolyn. So before I turn it over, just want to remind you guys, if you have questions for Megan and Carolyn, go ahead, post them in the chat. We'll be posting some links for you in there as well. And Carolyn, thank you so much for lending your voice and being here with us today. And with that, I'll hand it over to Megan.
Perfect. Thank you, Gina. You set us up for an awesome conversation. And Carolyn, I am so excited to dig in. I mean, like you have quite the boss resume, as Gina just rattled off. But,
Thanks.
we go way back to my days at the WNBA, and I'm so excited that we can reconnect and wanted to have a conversation with you about not only just the fan project, but like the landscape of women's sports and kind of stepping back and understanding the athlete's perspective. Because a lot of times we get great perspective from influencers, from business leaders, but the core often is around the athlete. And I think it's so important that we can engage that piece and that perspective in the conversation. So let's step back a little bit. Let's learn a little bit more about how you came into the space of being a professional athlete. And let's rewind back to, I guess, your younger playing days. Tell me, what was your first touch point with sports? And within that, what was the first time you came across understanding that there's women's sports and what differences there may have been between women's sports and men's sports?
Sure. So I am one of 5 kids in a very active household. And so as soon as we were old enough to sign up for a sport, we did and went for it. So even though I am obviously known as a basketball player, I've played almost every sport there is out there, whether it's been soccer, lacrosse, softball, swimming, tennis. If there was a sport to be played in a certain season, we were doing it. I think that I really benefited from the existence of the WNBA and also the incredible performance of the '99 World Cup women's soccer team. So that all happened when I was pretty young. And that was a very impressionable, first visible moment that there are, yes, I see all of these male athletes, but then there are also these incredible female athletes out there too, who are winning and being competitive and strong. And so we are, 2 girls and 3 boys in my family, and we've never had to, I think, second guess our athletic dreams, because that's having that visual and understanding that was an option has been a really big deal.
Well, tell me, did you grow up watching women's sports? Because I think a lot of people are surprised to find out that there are female athletes, world-class female athletes such as yourself, that are competing at the top of their game. And you'd ask them, like, well, who do you watch or who inspires you? And a lot of times the answer was, well, like, I don't really watch, I just played. So one question is like, did you watch? And if not, I would love to know kind of like what were some of those hurdles or barriers that kept you from watching?
Sure. I think if I try to think back to, the earliest memories of watching, it was primarily around the Olympics. And so getting to watch all of the Olympic athletes and get to see all the different, incredible performances and that there were so many different sports. And so that was huge. And really the movement of soccer was huge at that time. And so I think that those are probably the 2 visuals that I had. And then I grew up in, outside of Boston, and so very sports heavy market. And so, whether it was the Patriots, the Red Sox, the Bruins, there's plenty of incredible sports happening in that city. I don't really remember, honestly, seeing a ton of the WNBA at that time, and whether it was just because it just wasn't the channel that we were getting, and the closest team in Connecticut didn't come along until a little bit later. And so but I think seeing the primarily the Olympians, the US soccer, and then having so many collegiate teams was really probably what made the biggest impression on me.
Got it. So as part of the fan project, we've been sharing what we call the She Did That moment, right? So, and getting and encouraging fans and business leaders and influencers and athletes to really talk about a time, a memory when she did that, when you saw an athlete, you saw a female athlete particularly that inspired you, right? A special moment. And I would love to know from you, like, what is your She Did That moment? Like, did you come across a female athlete that inspired you in a particular way? And if so, share that with us. We want to know about it.
I'd love to. So when I was in 8th grade, and our middle school basketball team took a trip to Boston College to watch a game. And I remember we sat down, and I didn't realize this until I left New England, that it's unusual that the arena is a combo ice hockey, basketball arena that doesn't necessarily happen at all the other universities. But, you're in this massive arena and it was filled with fans. And this was during like the golden Big East era of Boston College women's basketball. And, you walk in, they hand you a roster sheet. And I remember flipping it over and just scanning the heights of all the women on the team. I've always been very tall for my age group. And so being able to look down and see like, oh my gosh, there are several women who are my height, if not taller. I think at the time I was 6'3", so not quite my current 6'6", but seeing that, oh my, Becky Gottstein, Mo Leahy, Brooke Queenan, Catherine Ress, all these really impressive, powerful women out there being, strong and agile post players. Versus I think I was still just a kind of a tall girl playing basketball at the time. That was really, sparked some inspiration. And I believe it was later that summer, if not the following, that I attended. It was a post player focused position camp with Bill Gould, who was the post coach for Boston College at the time. And he brought along Brooke Queenan, Lisa Makia, Aja Param. And it was a very, intimate setting. So learning more about footwork and more about like, you should have go-to post moves and you really should be able to finish with both your right and your left hand. I'm left-handed. So, getting that right hand layup figured out. And the opportunity to interact with those players who, were eye level for me was really fun. And they did a great job of really teaching us at that camp. And so I really think that was the start of a shift toward, okay, I'm going to, there's more to this than what I'm currently doing. There's an opportunity to study if I, study and go to university if I keep playing. And it was really fun to have that experience. And I think that was really important.
Gotcha. So as you made your journey into the collegiate space as a college athlete, a premier college athlete, that's where I got to know you, and then ascended to the WNBA as a professional athlete. From that lens and that perspective, like what are some things that you experienced, things that you noticed from the athlete's lens that you think can be better across the women's sports landscape, or kind of rephrase that to say, like, what are we missing from your perspective to help to be able to continue to help drive investment and lift up women's sports in the way that it should be? Like, what is missing from your point of view?
I do think that visibility is huge, and this last summer in the bubble, everything, we didn't have fans. It was really just whoever was allowed to be there to operate the season was in market, so to say, in the bubble. And it was maybe one of the first times that friends and family, no matter where they live, they were able to tune in and see our games, no problem. And being able to do that on a major network and every other night, it was tiring for us, but it was really an exciting summer for fans to be able to tune in and watch if they couldn't be there. And I think, previously I've heard, depending on how the game's being carried or where it is and what the broadcast partnership might be in a particular region, and I think even at the college level sometimes too, I do believe that the fans who want to engage with the WNBA are there. And it was really great that it felt like this summer that it was really no problem. And whether it's on ESPN, ABC, or CBS, those partnerships have been really helpful for just getting our game out there and visible. And I think that's huge. If you see it, then you can understand what's so exciting about the product of the WNBA. And so hopefully that's the start of even more.
Yeah, I love that, and totally agree. I think the moment that the world kind of paused, we all kind of remember that last year, close to this time. But having people slow down and being able to have access to and easily tune into and see these world-class athletes, and also listen to know what you have to say was a game changer. And we want to continue to see that across other sports, because I definitely think that is the key. Visibility is a absolutely key component of this. But let's also shift the lens and talk about, not only have you been like on the court, but you've actually been in the boardroom. And yeah, and so like one of the things that I'll say I'm so proud of it is the development of the executive committee for the Players Association. You held a seat on that committee, and you were definitely had a huge hand to play in helping negotiate a collective bargaining agreement that I believe was back in 2018. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But a game changer and an agreement where you as an athlete were able to say, listen, league, listen to the rest of the association. This is what women need. Right. And I'm going to force you to put your money where your mouth is, and we're going to change some things to help improve the experience. And I think it's not only for WNBA players, right, but for women's sports in general. It kind of sets the tone for some basic level demands that we know that women in sports need. So can you kind of speak to that experience? What was that experience like, and how were you able to kind of drive that change to get the backing, to get people to put their money where their mouth is with that?
I feel so fortunate to have been able to work on that team of people with the rest of the executive committee.
Yeah.
Our fearless leader, Nneka Ogwumike, is unbelievable. She just does a great job day in and day out representing the players and really like pushing the envelope on, where women's sports should be going. And I think setting a precedent for how working women should be treated. And so being on that team and our staff, so much work went into that, and it was hard, but at the same time, so important to, I think, be part of those discussions. A lot of what we do as pro athletes is in and around, the WNBA schedule. It's very compressed, it's very intense, and so we spend a lot of time preparing for the next game, and before you know it, the season's over. And so having some time to really examine, where it is that we're trying to go, how do we get there, really organizing our thoughts and what's going to make sense, and seeing that we all want the same thing, that the league and the players want the WNBA to survive and thrive and continue to grow, and doing something that initially felt like a risk, like opting out in 2018, actually gave us the time to have some really important discussions and dive into these issues and really make improvements on the travel experience, have an increase in salary and compensation, and have some really progressive maternity leave benefits, whether it's, guaranteed salary while you're on leave, a childcare stipend, and even like family planning benefits for players. And it's an exciting start for sure. And I think we were all very proud, when we signed the agreement, and look forward to just how taking care of some of these things like, travel and hotel rooms and supporting working moms is only going to enhance and showcase even more how talented the league is, and how it continues to get even more competitive as the years go on. We're experiencing a really exciting free agency in the WNBA, and that's thanks to, I think, an increase in salary, and it's only, good things to come. So really, really great to have the opportunity to work on that. And I think it helped to show that even when I'm done playing, that there are other ways to stay involved with the game and continue to drive women's sports.
Yep. So then let me actually ask you, in understanding that the mission of the Fan Project is to drive investment across the women's sports landscape, on a global scale, right? And so what particularly excites you about the potential that fans have, the power that fans have to use their voice to help create change? What excites you about the Fan Project, and how we can kind of impact raising the bar across women's sports?
I think that in general, over the last several years, whether it's in sports or when it comes to elections and the state of our country, everyone is eager to contribute and to act in a certain way. And so it's exciting to see, like record voter turnout, and because people were trying to find positive and productive ways to contribute and speak up and make a difference. And so many times whenever I've run into, anyone, and particularly other women, they want to know how they can help, how can we help women's sports? And so it's really fun that the Fan Project is giving giving all of us a very tangible action, and that it's something, this is stuff that I'm excited to learn about too, that whether if I can't tune into the game, but by purchasing, an orange hoodie, or by following this athlete and making sure I tune into like what she's doing, that's all going to be positive data to help drive visibility for women's sports. So I think anytime that we have the opportunity to act and contribute is always a very positive situation.
Yeah, I love what you mentioned, because part of what we're trying to capture with the fan project is things that are casual engagements, right? We understand that like there's these traditional metrics out there that don't truly capture how people are engaging in women's sports, that they're liking the W hoodie, that they're following the NWSL, right? Like in digital spaces, and that there's so much going on across the social media landscape to kind of augment the other things. I think that gets lost in the sauce a little bit. And so what we're really excited about is the data that we're sitting on, to being able to actually make the case to say, this is where people are engaging, this is how they are interacting, and this is where you should put your money, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I do have a question for you, one more before we turn it over to some questions from our participants that have joined us. If you had 30 seconds in the elevator with let's say a key business executive or decision maker about what they could do to change and to continue to push women's sports forward, like what would you want to talk to them about? Like what areas would you want them to address first? What's your 30-second pitch to them?
Oh,
come on. I'm doing real today.
I know. I would encourage that anyone who's in a position to actually engage in partnership or sponsorship, really consider it. I think when we've seen, whether it's through the Players Association side, through some of the partnerships we've forged with Rep, who's now One Team Partners, or the WNBA has their Changemaker partners who have kind of like doubled down and really invested in the league. There are a lot of really exciting opportunities to find common ground, and whether that's simply investing in the sport itself, or giving with the female athletes a platform to speak on social issues and racial equality and LGBTQ rights, whatever it is, voter advocacy. It's going to help the athletes, but I believe it's going to help the community as a whole. And you're only inspiring the next generation. You're making that more visible, and you're contributing to an even more competitive league. So wherever possible, if there are opportunities for partnership, which, I'm learning more about this too, but I think that that's really, that's where the magic happens.
Perfect. I want to pause for a second because I see this chat window over here is buzzing. So you guys, if you have questions for Carolyn, if you have questions for myself, please drop them in the chat because we want you to be a part of this dialogue too. And before we wrap up, we want to take a few questions from you. So I actually saw a question, I believe from Sydney earlier. She wanted to know, Carolyn, like, who's your favorite women's national soccer team player? And I think this question actually is particularly important because there's a lot of crossover and support for women's sports. It's not just, WNBA fans are just fans of the WNBA. They might be fans of soccer and of hockey and of track and field. And so I think it's a particularly insightful question for that reason, because although you are a former WNBA player, now that you just hung up your sneakers, there's your interest across women's sports. Like it goes beyond just one sport. What I want to say. So yeah, who's your favorite NWSL player, Carolyn?
Sure. So this may seem very obvious, but I'm a huge fan of Megan Rapinoe, not only because of how her incredible, athletic skills and how awesome of a soccer player she is, but I think how she has used her platform and has been generous to use her platform on behalf of the WNBA. And she really she's seemingly fearless in how she speaks out for the right thing. Also, has been incredibly kind whenever I've had the opportunity to speak to her. And so I think, she's a great role model. And anytime that you have an opportunity to meet another great athlete who's doing great things. So yeah, huge fan.
Great. We have a great question from Nancy, particularly relevant because one of the recent headlines across the women's sports landscape has been new ownership for the Aces. And so Nancy wants to know, do you think that being aligned with the NFL owner will have some benefits to help, continue to amplify, particularly the Las Vegas Aces and maybe the WNBA in general? What are your thoughts on that?
So the exciting thing is that Mark Davis has been a season ticket holder for the Aces from the beginning. You can frequently, if not always, see him, courtside, and he's been not only a huge fan but a huge supporter. So I think it's only the start of great things to come. The Aces have focused on a player first mentality, and MGM did an incredible job launching the franchise and bringing professional women's basketball to a city that really didn't have pro sports for a while before we showed up, and now being part of this wave with the Golden Knights and the Raiders has been really exciting. So from what I understand, that Mark Davis is absolutely committed to keeping that going and supporting the players, and really has been a huge support. And so I think it's positive.
Got it. Okay, Carolyn, one more question. I know I want to get to as many as possible, and we only had 30 minutes, but I think this is a particularly good one. So Bill asked, who do you see as your biggest fan growth demographic in the near future as women's sports continues to grow? Or maybe there's a demographic that you're the most excited about?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I will say that I got very excited when I recently had some 8th grade boys were doing a project on sports and I think social justice in athletics for school. And I was thrilled, one, that they reached out and thought like, hey, we want to speak to this WNBA player. And I think they also talked to Chiney Ogwumike, another rock star who's killing it both on the court and at ESPN. And then as I spoke with them, these 2 young boys were very familiar with like, oh yeah, we know this player, and when we watch the Liberty, this is what we think, and we thought it was great when this happens. And so I think for a while, women's basketball has kind of felt like it's for women, and I get very excited when we see entire families and particularly younger boys who are thinking about the WNBA the same way that they think about the NBA. So I don't know if I have any insights on the next group to get, but I know that that's what gets me excited when the younger kids, no matter who they are excited to be at a WNBA game.
Perfect. Well, Carolyn, I'm going to have to stop there, but I want to say thanks so much for joining the Fan Project Live. We're so excited to continue to follow you in your next chapter because you've crushed the first couple of chapters. I know the rest of the story is going to be amazing. So we are just so delighted to have had the conversation with you. And we want to thank everyone for joining us. And if you're interested in continuing to support and to drive investment across the women's sports landscape, we encourage you to visit thefanproject.co. And you can talk about how, one, you could either share your data or 2, engage, because there's lots of exciting things that are coming up for that. So join us next week for the Fan Project Live. We'll be back here at the same time next Thursday at 2:30 Eastern Time. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good one.